The stars watch as nature sleeps during the long, cold winter nights. As the days get longer and the sun warms the earth, nature and the trees come alive.
Just take the end of this tube, cut this off square.
The old and new methods of gathering maple syrup begin.
The Maple Belt is basically around the Great Lakes region in the world, and that's the only place that maple syrup is produced in the whole world. Canada and United States. Very, very proud history of maple production right here in this area.
In 1893, Garrettsville sent a contingent of maple syrup and sugar producers to the Columbian exhibition at the World's Fair in Chicago. In that year, a Garrettsville area farmer was awarded the first place medal for the best maple sugar in the world.
Summit Metro Park started making maple syrup a few years ago, and our logo is a maple leaf. And it feels so fitting that we would, as educators, show people how this thing that everybody knows and loves, but we take it for granted, the nuance, all of the effort and the time and the expertise that goes into making what seems like a very simple product, but there's just so much to it.
You need fluctuating temperatures mostly. The barometric pressure also has to do with it. And it doesn't matter if it's cold at night and warm during the day, or warm at night, cold during the day. You need those fluctuations to bring the sap out.
As you drop, then you tap it and boom.
So there's different methods nowadays to collect sap, turn it into syrup. You've got buckets and you've got tubing. With buckets, that's great for smaller operation, backyard operation. Tubes are so much more efficient. It's something that takes one time to go and set all of that up, and we just have to go back out once a year, check out the lines, make sure squirrels haven't nibbled on them, tap new holes into the trees, reconnect the tubes, and everything is gravity fed to one big collection. Ecologically, that way is a lot better on the trees and their roots. We're not stepping on them, we're not compacting the soil.
The Native Americans, they were making it when the Europeans came across. The Indians used to use a log. They would actually hollow the log out, and they called them a dugout. And they would start a fire nearby, and they'd heat the rocks up. Meanwhile, they would put sap into the hollowed out log, and then they would take the hot rocks and put it in, which would heat it up and make it steam. And it wasn't actually maple syrup that they made back then. It was more like a taffy or more of a sugar.
This measures the density, how thick the syrup is.
First things first, at the beginning of the year, we walk every single tube, put your hand around it and run your hand up every tube and feel for anything that has gone wrong. Squirrels nibbling, anything like that. Double check that everything is at a nice gentle grade. You don't want tubes going downhill and back up again. Sap will sit in that low pocket. Once all of our tubes are all set up, ready to go, you go to each tree and drill a small hole into it, tap the tap in. Every time you put a tap into a tree, you're creating a scar, basically. And you want that part of the tree, because it's running sap and nutrients up and down and around, you want the next hole to be a little bit over and a little bit up or down.
This cross-section of a maple tree shows how it had healed itself from earlier tapping.
This is called an evaporator.
The G.H. Grimm Company started right here in Hudson, Ohio. Well, Gustav Grimm, he's a guy that's credited with coming out with a evaporator pan that had flues in it. Most pans were flat back then or in kettles. He decided that if you made a pan that had flues in it, that the pan went up and down, the fire would have to go up through the flues, so you would have a much greater heating surface, which would make it much more efficient to boil your sap. That makes a better product. The way they did it before they came out with the thermometers and the hydrometers was they would do what was called a scoop test, where they would take the syrup scoop and run it along and pull it up. We're looking for, instead of dripping off drop by drop, we're looking for the syrup to come off in a sheet.
See this machine?
Yes.
This machine is a magic machine. It's a magic machine because what it does is it takes out 50% of the water from the sap. So when the sap goes in, it's at 2%. When the sap comes out, it's at 4 or 5%. So it's on its way to making maple syrup. And look in and see how it boils.
We've grown considerably over the last few years, so we're up to about 130 or so taps. We do not plan to make this a profitable endeavor. Reason being, there are so many small mom and pop operations who we do not want to take business away from.
By the time it gets here, it's maple syrup.
The syrup that we produce here at Liberty Park is completely given back to the communities. We give taste tests to all of the public who comes and visits our event. We have ranged anywhere from 400 to 800 people over the weekend, which is incredible that many folks are coming out to learn about the process. By the time you dole all that out, that's all the syrup that we've got.
Cool, huh?
It's neat seeing people getting excited about it. You know, things that we take for granted. It's not that big of a deal, but somebody that doesn't know the history, somebody that doesn't know the process, it's a big deal to them, and it's a lot of fun.